But yeah, thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm Spencer Stein, Senior Account Manager here at Conductor, and I am joined by my colleague, I think friend, now that we're in person. This is my first time meeting Eduardo in person. It's always fun when you get to meet people that you've seen on Zoom only. And my sort of key thing is I figure out if I've met someone before because I'm like, oh, you're taller than I thought, and Eduardo is taller than I thought. So, but no, really excited to be here with you today, talking about a super important topic, obviously site structure in AI search, and really glad to be doing this with you, and ready to get into it, Eduardo, if you are.
Absolutely, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to speak with everyone here. Throughout my years of experience, I've experienced a lot. As many of you, I've been working in this industry for quite some time, for 13 years to be exact. So I've been through the Penguin updates, the Panda updates, all those downfalls that we've all experienced, right? Keyword stuffing and losing absolutely zero visibility on the SERP. So again, thank you to Spencer and thank you to the Conductor team.
Absolutely. Also, I forgot to mention Eduardo joined us here from Tampa, and just wanted to really thank everybody who's kind of coming from different locations. So, I'd like to learn a little bit. I think the audience would appreciate to know a little bit more. Did we just go out? I think we just went out.
Did we lose power?
You're good. Hello? Hello? Yes. So yeah, just if you want to elaborate just a little bit more about some of your experience and how some of the changes have impacted, especially in the vein of site structure and SEO.
Yeah, absolutely. So throughout those 13 years, I've had numerous industries that I've worked in. I started off in agencies working with plastic surgeons, roofing companies, and I moved on to hospitality from there. From hospitality, worked in real estate, then I found myself in healthcare, and now I'm in e-commerce. So I've seen the ups and downs, and one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that there's a lot of trends in SEO, right? So it's hard for us to understand those trends and what trends to follow. Through those years, really, I lean on the blogs, right? Search Engine Journal, Search Engine Land. Most recently, I've been leaning on LinkedIn, which has given me a lot of good information because I have people like you guys, right? All of you guys that support me in my journey to be up here. And I'll start posting more on LinkedIn as well so I can support you guys from an e-commerce lens. So the journey has really gone up and down, learning a lot. And I think that's one of the most important things is don't become stagnant, right? Even though we have leaderships that dictate our roles and what we need to do to enhance our websites, we also need to be leaders in ourselves, and we need to report up, and we need to take that learning curve and produce that learning curve for people that typically put SEO and GEO and everything else behind the curtain.
Yeah, and you referenced how throughout your career things have changed as far as the industry you're in. You're obviously now in e-commerce, and having worked over the years with a lot of different brands, I know that e-commerce is kind of a beast of itself. And I think when you think about site structure, especially in the age of AI search, it's such a specific dynamic. And I'd be curious from that experience, first of all, if there's anything else you want to share specifically about the differences of being in e-commerce from a role point of view, but also specifically when you're auditing large e-commerce sites, specifically for AI readiness, what are some of the most common site architecture mistakes that you see that can hurt AI discoverability?
That's a fantastic question. And the reason I say that is because I've recently found some mishaps as well. One of the big things is ensure that your website is not blocking LLMs. I think that goes without saying, but it's something that's easily overlooked, right? And with that, you have to partner with the partners in your company. So make those solid relationships so that way you guys can work fluidly as well. Another big factor is ensuring that important pages are indexed. I work in e-commerce, so seasonality is a big thing for us, and we work in advance, right? We're working 3 months in advance, so I need to ensure that those pages that we want to be discoverable are indexed. Another thing with that, with being indexed, Schema. I think we're all proud proponents of Schema. Well, make sure that you're checking for invalid schema. That's incredibly important on those CLPs where you're driving that front door entrance to your consumers. Alongside that, just having structured data, right? Knowing how to use structured data and put it together appropriately by having schema validators or checking Google to ensure that it's coming across with no errors.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, I know you said it might seem obvious that you don't want, LLMs blocking your site, but, working across a pretty varied client base, you do see some things. And I think also it's interesting because if you think back like a year ago, I feel like there was more of a debate actually as to like, do you or don't you when it comes to, LLM bots crawling your site. I think nowadays with the shift of the focus on AI and specifically on LLMs and getting traffic from LLMs, I think everybody's on at least closer to the same page as far as wanting to be discoverable. So I think that advice that you gave is key. And so from the experience that you've had, what are some technical optimizations and what's like had the biggest impact, would you say, on AI systems? You mentioned schema. Are there specific schema types or structural markup strategies you'd recommend specifically also for retail?
Yeah, there's a few that come to mind, right? And that is understanding the consumer, right? So with that, we have tools at our disposal that not only shows us keywords, but also questions that people are asking, right? So ensuring that you have FAQs on those prominent pages to guide that intent, right? So that's one schema is FAQ. Another one is HowTo schema. This is something that I've been playing around with myself. As you guys can imagine, for an e-commerce website, there's not a lot of space for SEO. There's not a lot of space for content. I'm sure you guys have all used the accordions that we see on numerous websites, but they're fruitful, right? They make sense. Where we don't have space to add content, we add at the bottom because that's what we have available to us. HowTo schema has been a little bit more prominent for myself. And the reason for that is because some keywords don't return questions. Some keywords have zero interest. It's medium volume, let's say 500 to 1,000 search volume for a keyword, but there's no questions. So with that, I actually use Conductor, the writing tool, to help me create a brief. The brief that it proposed was a how-to brief. At first, I thought it was fantastic, right? I think that this content really resonates with our consumer, specifically because I work in e-commerce, right? And I work for furniture, so people are constantly shopping for what we're selling. But that how-to schema, that how-to copy correlated with the schema, it brings another level to the journey that we're trying to put out there for the consumer. Yes, we have the product, but we should also be the leader in the industry of how we speak to that product. Not just the product, but how it goes into your home. Now, I work for Ashley today, but I used to work for Aspen Dental as well. And that's a completely different beast in the sense of how we cater that content, but it all really comes down to intent focus and going back full circle, right, is adding those different schema markups to ensure that not just LLMs, but crawlers can read the copy in the back end.
Yeah, and I mean, for a lot of e-commerce businesses, there's also a local aspect to it. Did you have any insight on that? I think when we had talked a little bit about, there were some insights there, even specific to like types of schema, right?
Yeah, no, great follow-up question. So I work in brick and mortar as well, right? Not just SEO, enterprise SEO, but I also do local SEO. I've done it for Hilton, done it for Aspen Dental, now I'm doing it for Ashley. And just keeping those updates, keeping those schemas updated a la your pricing, inventory, and product details, and ensuring that you're working with your paid team as well, ensuring that the merchant center reflects the information that you're putting in the back end.
Yeah, and I think I've also kind of, heard from a lot of clients like the value of geo coordinates and hour schema, also really important, especially for like local when you're talking about brick and mortar.
Yeah, you think about the old consistency of SEO, and that is a NAP, right? Name, address, phone number, ensuring that that is right at all levels. Otherwise, you're going to be getting the wrong address on Gemini, and before you know it, you might be driving off the road.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. You mentioned like the wrong address in Gemini, not necessarily a question as much as like an observation. I know, I believe during the keynote, Wei kind of alluded to some of the new features that we have coming and, making sure that the accuracy of what we're seeing within the LLMs is there. I think that's fast becoming a big priority for businesses. I think like we kind of got a little bit used to, Google they might not be perfect. They might not work with you in the way that maybe they used to 10 years ago. But, I feel like we got a little used to being able to, if your hours are incorrect or if your location is, you just edit your Google My Business. Whereas with, LLMs like ChatGPT, it's a little bit more of a Wild West. So, tools like what I think Conductor offers are, hopefully helpful.
No, it gives you that overview look, especially if you're working with a lean team. As I mentioned earlier, SEO typically gets brushed under the rug, right? So I would assume, maybe I shouldn't assume, but there's a lot of lean teams out there. And with that, you think about efficiency. So we looked at platforms like Conductor to ensure we have all that information in one spot. We could digest it and move it to leadership.
Yeah, and I think you make a fair point. Like everybody in this room, I'm sure, like you said, if you're anywhere near SEO, you know that challenge of resourcing, of kind of fighting for importance within the organization. Now, though, with the sort of crossover with AI, it really is such a different ballgame. I mean, we've had CEOs of Fortune 500 companies join trainings like that. That never used to happen. To be frank, and I think it's really about adapting how you take your priorities and kind of using that newfound enthusiasm. But kind of getting back on the track of site health, what are some signals that teams should be monitoring as AI search evolves, and how do you stay on top of structural issues at scale?
Yeah, it's a great question. So kind of like Seth and team was alluding to earlier, right? Using the tools at your disposal, setting it up correctly though, just like SEO, building a foundation for your reporting to ensure that you're getting the right results and the right information. It might take a little time, but setting up that foundation is going to set you up for success. As it pertains to AI, you think about the citations, right? Where are you appearing? What are you appearing for? I think that's going to dominate the future. As we're walking slowly towards this new path, right? I think we all have a lot of different questions, but we set up the different segments as well. For us, e-commerce, we have numerous categories. Outside of categories, we have the holistic site health as well. So utilizing those tools, foundationally getting in there, setting it up, ask questions too, right? As SEOs, we should be partnering with our product team. Myself, I partner with the site merch team, creative, etc. The collaboration doesn't end. So see what people are seeking for as well. What are important for them to understand for you to succeed? One of the biggest components of Conductor is Conductor website monitoring, and we have we have millions of pages. We have millions of pages. So for me and my team to really dissect all that information, like it's a hard task. So I'm happy to say that I have alerts set up to let me know when title tags have changed, when schema's not working, when there is a page that has gone discontinued. And trust me, I face that a lot because in e-commerce, products are constantly in rotation, especially as it pertains to seasonality. So we need to ensure, for instance, Black Friday is coming up, right? It's the most important holiday for any e-commerce business online. So I've already set up segments specific to that Black Friday URL to ensure that we're receiving those alerts ahead of time.
Yeah, and Eduardo and I have a pretty good anecdote if we have some time at the end of how sort of some of the citation tracking and kind of technical monitoring can sometimes come together, maybe not in the way you expect, but so we'll see if we have some time for that. But I really wanted to make sure, I know we talked a bit in prepping for this about some of the signals that you think are going to be, maybe right now it's like your teams need to start doing this, but these are going to really start to be table stakes in 12 months. So in other words, like if you're not doing this, you're not really at the table. What are some of the things that stand out to you?
Yeah, I think we're all fans of content, right? Content is king. You cannot rank for something that you don't sell on your website. So structured content, going back to what we were speaking about earlier, the about schema types, the how-to schema types, the FAQ schema types. Make sure that you're following those as they're listed, right? As they're prescribed. There's no workaround to adding schema to the website, ensuring that it's valid as well, right? Ensuring that everything is structured correctly. And also, look at how AI prompts are appearing. You want to format your copy the same way. you can always take away something from your competitors. You can always take away something from doing your manual search. That's one thing, is getting your hands dirty. You know, a lot of us rely on these tools to really give us this outputs for what we're looking for. But there's something to be said about manual search. There's something to be said with, we call it dirty fingernail at Ashley. And what that means is, you know, you're not afraid to get your hands dirty. You're not afraid to go in there and get the work done, even though you have these tools at your disposal.
I love that phrase. I love it, hearing just like all the different individual teams, like, you know, what you kind of refer to everything. And so what other indicators do you think suggest that some of the site and structural changes that you're making suggest that they're working? And are there any other kind of testing and validating? I know you mentioned getting your hands dirty, but like, is there anything else that kind of stands out that you look to, like, when you're reporting on and people are asking, like, hey, the work you've been doing, like, how do we know it's working? Like, what kind of speaks to that for you?
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to share of voice, right? You think about your competitors and going back to it, and I'll regurgitate a lot of the same things that I say. The reason for that is because they're all foundational pieces. You can't go forward without a strong foundation. So understanding your competition, right? Understanding where they are placed. We have the tools at our disposal to really have an overview of, for us, it's numerous e-commerce companies, numerous regional companies, but what are they saying? What are we saying? How are we increasing that impression share? How are we increasing that share of voice as well? We think about brick and mortar, we think about e-commerce, two different beasts in themselves, right? But understanding the potential and the growth in both is really what's going to put forward a fruitful effort for yourself and your team.
You know, something you said earlier, you were talking about how you stay on trend, right? Reading, you know, like Search Engine Journal and things like that. But I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. What is your take on using AI and search bots, chat bots, to better understand AI and better understand site signals? I know that's like a hot topic right now. Do you have any POV on that?
I don't currently, but as you're asking the question, you know, I start to think, you know, what are those signals? Good question. I don't have an answer for all you guys. Yeah,
I wonder if because this is, I feel like, coming up more and more. I know Rachel, who we work with on our team, had a really good suggestion around, like ChatGPT has very good internal documents, and kind of using that to search actually does a better job than just asking it, hey, if I make this, you know, change to my site, are you going to crawl it better? You know, and as we sort of get towards the end here, I thought it would be interesting for the audience to hear what we talked about with that sort of anecdote. I know so some of the folks in the room hopefully have had a chance to try out I also feel like I've been ignoring this side of the room, apologies. Our AI search performance feature, right, where you're seeing brand mentions and citations. You know, for Ashley, we had kind of like an interesting thing happen where, you know, you work really, focused more on web monitoring, and we were kind of going through prioritization, and you had shared with us that, you know, maybe the blog, one of the many blogs you guys have, like, wasn't as much of a priority, but when we had actually started with search performance, do you want to tell the audience kind of like what you saw and how it maybe shifted things a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. When people think of a blog, right, they think of it as informational. It doesn't always fit your websites. People can't produce an ROI on it. If you're trying to tell that story, right, to make your blog prominent on your website, just go on AI. Just put in your prompts and see the citations that appear. 9 out of 10 times, it's going to be a blog. And you could tell because of the way that it's structured. And that should also lead your strategy into content. You know, we want to be the trailblazers. We want to be the trendsetters, right? I think we're all focused on that for SEO. We want to be the first ones to rank, whether it be in Google, whether it be for AI. What works, works. So we cannot dilute the strategies that we see out in the open. So when I see a lot more frequent blogs, and blogs might be an afterthought, that's what gives me my table stakes to come to leadership and say, listen, 4 out of 5 citations are blogs. Are we going to see an ultimate ROI on that? Not immediately, but it also goes down to CRO too, right? SEO is not just SEO. Like when I think of SEO and we get this GEO, AIO, find me on LinkedIn. You'll see my title says SEO, I think AIO,
EIEIO, the old McDonald
there you go.
optimization.
Yeah, the lyrics are right there. It might be a little long. No, but it says, AEO, SEO, all the O's. Right? And the reason for that is because I firmly believe that SEO is a multitude of all of these avenues. Full circle, CRO. Work with your content team, work with your creative team. Create a blog that creates avenues to those landing pages, to your PDPs, your CLPs, your PLPs. And think about intent too. The future is all about intent searches. Before we were just creating copy to rank, before we were just creating, today we're just creating copy to appear in AIs. Think about the consumer. When you're doing your keyword research, what is that intent? Is it transactional, commercial? What is it? Feed your website what consumers are looking for. Take yourself and any internal perspective out of the equation and create content for the consumer. That's going to lead, again, to opportunity and hopefully conversion. And partnering with the powers that be on your team, creative, product, make friends with your product and development team, everyone, because those are the ones that are really gonna push that needle for you. But back to blogs, you're able to put fruitful content, you're able to put the expertise there, and you're also able to convert. So think of blogs as your new portal of conversion.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate your time, Eduardo. Appreciate everybody's time in the audience. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of the sessions. And make sure if you want to come up and say hi, and a very approachable guy. And yeah, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.